Alright, let's get the ball rolling. Alright, it's good to join everyone today. I was hoping to join you guys quite earlier actually, to be honest. Kaso sobrang pagod tayo kahapon. I don't know, is it because I'm overwhelmed with everything that I have to catch up on since bumalik tayo from Europe. Almost 2 weeks po tayo nawala. Although hindi naman tayo nagsarap buhay nung panahon ng nasa Pilipinas na tayo by the time na bumabaha na dito sa Baguio. Although na-caught naman tayo dun sa grabing traffic, well, hindi lang traffic, grabing talagang disaster, no? Transportation catastrophe nung araw na yan kasi papunta tayo sa Cebu. Anyway, for some reason, I don't feel fully recovered pa. Kaya kagabi, I was just so tired and exhausted. Sabi ko mag-power nap lang ako ng konti and then go tayo ulit. Pero hindi talaga kaya ng katawan natin eh. Medyo zaddy na. Hindi, okay naman ako. Mga 2 weeks ago, okay pa naman na kami. Just the other week, I was just barely sleeping one day to the other day. Barcelona, Ibiza, ganun, travel. Pero siguro nag-catch up na rin nung hectic schedule natin over the past week. So hindi tayo naka-join. Sabi ko bawin na lang ako this morning. Obviously later on tonight, balik tayo dun sa ating RRM dahil marami tayong pag-usapan including of course Mayor Cynthia Villar, no? Wait, hindi pa mayor. Gusto mag-mayor si Cynthia Villar. So interestingly guys, yung pinaka-benta natin episode from RM last week, hindi ko na-expect yan, yung local politics episode, yung tinawag natin ng Battle of Manila Mayors, no? From Makati to Manila, from Isko to Nancy. At ngayon, pati si Cynthia Villar ay sasama na dito sa drama nito. So we're gonna have a follow-up on that with Cynthia Villar now openly suggesting na she's gonna run for mayor at parang sinabi niya kung hindi siya bobotohin kasalanan. Problema na niya yan. You're lost. But anyway, pag-usapan natin yan, among other things, of course, yung kaso ni Senator Trillanes also against the Dutertes. This is something that was announced by former senator dito sa show natin just the other night. Sabi niya, bukas na bukas, magsampa siya ng bagong kaso laban sa mga Dutertes. Pag-usapan din natin yung, medyo bastos talaga yung ginagawa ni ex-human rights. Sabi ko, okay lang naman ex-human rights, wag lang ex-human. Dating presidential spokesman ni Digong na si Harry Boy, si Mr. Supra. Pag-usapan din natin, nagkakalat siya at pinagalitan siya talaga ni Sherwin Gatchalian. Senator Gatchalian, kanina tinext ko lang si Sherwin. Good job, sir. Good yan. Win na win yan. Tama lang yan. Talagang pag binabastos yung senadora at binabastos yung chairwoman at binabastos isang progresibong leader katulad ng Rizal Ontiveros, dapat that person has to be put in his or its right place. Alright? His right place. No, I mean, honestly guys, talagang ibang klase. So marami tayong pag-usapan. In the meantime also guys, katulad na pangako natin, isang reason na medyo na-overwhelmed din tayo. Kaya nagpagupit tayo at nagpalinis tayo para hindi masyadong obvious na overwhelmed tayo. So, thank God, katulad ng pangako ko sa inyo guys, I'm arranging something. So, simula next month, alright, magkakaroon na tayo ng ito na, parang kapihan, alright? Kapihan, of course, ukol ito sa West Philippine Sea, ukol ito sa ating national interest, ukol ito sa ating national security, among other things, guys. So, marami tayong pag-usapan in the coming months. So, we're hoping to have this episode every 2 weeks, perhaps, right? At dun sa pinaka-first episode natin, ito na, all stars na, di ba? Andyan na si Justice Carpio, nag-confirm na po siya, andyan si Llamas. And then we're gonna get also folks from the government side, the good side, whether it's Commodore Tariela, whether it's ADG Malaya, and then also some academics and experts. So I'm trying to arrange itong mga parang kapihan ng mga eksperto, no? At medyo press conference siya kasi mag-imbita din kami ng mga media people and all. But that's the big thing. One of the big things I'm working on. There are a couple of other things I'm also working on. So siguro medyo na-overwhelmed din tayo with all of these obligations kasi ako yung more or less I'm the project leader, right? So I have to do coordination, I have to do organization. Obviously, I'm trying to get help here and there in terms of getting people together, the logistics and all of that. Hindi naman mura gumawa ng mga ganitong events. So, I have to make sure I get everyone in, and at the same time we do it properly, we do it in the interest of the Filipino nation. So medyo siguro na overwhelmed din tayo kahapon, kaya lalo nag-contribute ito sa pagod natin. But as I said, katulad ng pangako sa inyo, I'm doing really my best, guys, to get everything together so that mag-level up na tayo in terms of having in-person events and all of that. As I said, our also hope is to have our own Spotify events, hindi naman concert, pero yung mga parang ticketed events with other speakers. Mahirap talaga, guys. Sa tingin niya, parang you guys, siguro dito sa mga talks natin, it comes off to you guys as if this is something very easy na effortless lang yan. But guys, just organizing things. Forget about the talk itself, the flow itself, the content itself, the editing. Just getting things together, sobrang stress talaga siya. So, I just hope people appreciate yung mga limitations natin as a human being. So talaga kahapon I was just overwhelmed thinking about all the logistics, people have to get together. Obviously expenses, ang mga others, pakain ka, mangimbita ka, mga ganun-ganun. And then obviously I'm working with different organizations, different people para I can put things together. At the same time, of course, I have to make sure na my editorial independence, my integrity as a journalist, my integrity as an academic, my integrity as a patriot, all of those things are also kept together. So hindi ito po madali, all right? Just to be clear about this. Also, let me thank dun sa mga nagpadala ng tulong dun sa mga flood victims. Unfortunately, I was not able to coordinate it with the people I was hoping to coordinate it with kasi by the time na bumalik tayo sa Manila, mukhang paalis ng iba. But I'll promise you na if ever we won't be able to give ito mga na-collect natin na a certain humble amount dun sa mga flood victims, for sure itatabi ko ito dun naman sa mga ibang activities natin, especially dun sa mga katutubo at saka yung mga indigenous groups, whether ito ay Cordillera region, whether ito ay sa Mindanao region. Alright? So again, thank you so much sa lahat ng mga sumuporta sa atin. I really, really appreciate it. This is also our little ways of giving back. Alright? Doon sa ating bansa at saka sa mga komunidad, no? Na may pangangailangan. Whether dito sa QC, whether dito sa Manila, or doon sa ating mga kasama natin na katutubo. Alright. Balikan natin yung gusto kong pag-usapan kagabi na hindi ko na nagawa dahil sa sobrang pagod natin. Let me do that, guys. Dahil this is very, very important. Okay? Medyo adjust lang natin ng konti ito, guys. Wait lang. Ayusin ko lang to. 1 second. Okay, ayusin ko lang yung lighting, guys, kasi medyo may imbalance tayo sa lighting dito. Pasensya na. Okay. Alright. No pressure. No pressure. Kailangan din natin ng kape. Okay. Ganito. I'm trying to also record this, guys, dito sa camera dito para may high resolution din tayo dito. So, pasensya na if I'm not gonna look exactly directly at you guys, but obviously, I'm gonna check your comments. I'm looking at your comments and all of that. Pag-usapan natin, guys, okay? Okay, magulo. So kahapon, what we discussed was the possibility of a grand coalition between the genuine opposition and essentially the administration ticket. And it was a very contentious discussion with former Senator Antonio Trillanes, who's no longer running at the national level. So yung mga nagsasabi now, they hope that Trillanes runs for Senate among others. Final na po yan, decided na siya na he will run for LGU, local government unit, because he feels that this is the way forward for the opposition. They also have to have footprint on the ground. And perhaps the Vico Soto model, and to a certain degree, also the Isko Moreno model could be replicated by other opposition or progressive leaders like Senator Trillanes. Now, the context of the conversation at medyo uminit ang conversation, and I want to also say my own 2 cents on this issue, is that Senator Trillanes has been pushing for essentially some of the genuine opposition candidates, katulad ni Bam Aquino, katulad ni Kiko Pangilinan, not so much with Chel Jokno, because I think Chel Jokno's position is very clear, human rights lawyer. There's just no way that you can see him having any kind of interface with the Marcos administration. So no, but at least with the two other candidates of the genuine opposition, Senator Trillanes is hoping na baka pwede sila mag-guest candidate. Now, that proposal was emphatically rejected by Leni Robredo. Leni Robredo essentially came out and said that if anything like that happens, it will be the betrayal of the core convictions of the opposition. Senator Rizal Ontiveros, who's now the de facto leader of the opposition and taking charge of essentially this ticket, the Bam Aquino, Kiko Pangilinan, and Chel Jokno ticket, also rejected the proposal but sounded much more nuanced, if not conditional. I think very clear naman both Lenny and Risa na the historical issues with the Marcoses is just too profound for us to just ignore and look at political exigencies ahead of next year's elections. So that's one side of the argument. Ang stance naman ni Trillanes is very simple. And that's why I quoted Lord Toranaga from Shogun. When you win, everything is possible. Essentially, the first rule in politics is to make sure viable candidate ka for an office. Because if you're not a viable candidate for office, I'm not sure what you're trying to do there, right? If you're trying to just make a point, gusto mong magpapogi lang, gusto mong mamarkahan ka lang, well, good for you. But at the end of the day, you run for office if you really believe you have a good chance of winning, and more importantly, you got the right set of policies and convictions once you're in office. At ang point ni Senator Trillanes is that the opposition has to really look at the facts on the ground. And the facts on the ground is tatlong election na kung saan sobrang talong-talo na itong genuine opposition. Leni Robredo in 2016 and Rizal Ontiveros in 2022 were kind of the exceptions. But nevertheless, across the board, sobrang grabe yung mga reversals, electoral reversals ng opposition. In 2019, for the first time in 81 years, wala man lang isang kandidato ng opposition ay nakapasok dun sa Senate, for instance. So, in every sense of the word, it has been an electoral catastrophe. Now, if you look at, of course, you also look at the preferences of people. Dun sa Octo survey, for instance, if you look at it. And let me be very clear. We cannot base our analysis on, I don't know, haka-haka lang or kwentong barbero lang. Alright? We cannot base it based on some chismis lang sa Viber or anong sinabi ng Titas of Manila. We cannot base it on some sort of mumbo-jumbo, I don't know, Google Analytics, whatever. Alright? Surveys are the best we got. Surveys are not perfect. Yes, surveys could be manipulated, but not all surveys are the same. Some surveys are more reputable than others. And let me be absolutely clear, inis na inis ako dun sa iba na parating dismissive kaagad sa surveys and questioning the integrity of the survey agencies. Two of my former colleagues, alright, are leading two of the surveys that I tend to always cite. In fact, three of my colleagues. My colleague at the Philippine Daily Inquirer, si Dr. Mangahas, who leads SWS. Si Dr. Holmes naman, my former colleague at LaSalle, who holds Pulse Asia. And of course, my former professor and good friend, si Professor Ranjit Rai, who leads Okta. Alright, these are the three that I tend to cite because these are the organizations that I know and I can vouch for the integrity of people who are leading them. Now, kung feeling mo mas magaling ka, kung feeling mo you have something more credible than that, you have better surveys or better analytics, please go ahead. But last time I checked, no one could provide something more credible to me. So, for the purpose of analytic discussion, hindi chismisan, hindi yung self-serving ideological bloviating nonsense, blabbering. No, for the sake of proper analytic discourse, tingnan natin yung mga most authoritative surveys na meron tayo. And ayon ko yung ugali ng iba dyan, nasa site lang nila yung Pulse Asia pag gusto na nila yung resulta. For instance, nung bumaba na yung approval rating ni BBM or pabaksak na yung approval rating sabihin natin ni SARA, biglang gusto na nila i-cite yung Pulse Asia. Hindi pwede yan. Alright? Or kung biglang pinakita ng Pulse Asia na sobrang konting Pilipina ay supportive dun sa charter change, biglang isa-cite nila yung Pulse Asia. That's disingenuous. If you really believe, genuinely believe, and you have an evidence that these surveys are cooked, right? Lutong Macau, then don't go there and selectively cite them. But to begin with, I rather believe the Ronald Holmes of this world. I rather believe the mangahas of this world who are my colleagues and I can vouch for their integrity, who are professors, who have PhDs, who know their stuff, who have graduated from top university, than some mumbo jumbo people out there. Okay, just to be clear about that. So if you look at the surveys, and unfortunately the only survey we have along these lines is from only Okta, and Okta is good. It's also by my colleagues in UP and my former professor. I hope that other agencies also provide that so that you can triangulate it. Now, if you look at that, 31% of Filipinos are Team BBM or Loyalista. Only 20% or so are DDS hardcore. Essentially, us versus the world. So, small plurality lang talaga yung core base ng mga Dutertes. That leaves you around 50% or 49% rather, who are not with either BBM or not with Duterte. Except, dun sa almost 50% na yan, kakapiraso lang ay nagsabi na they still believe in the genuine opposition. 4%, 5%, 6% with margin of error barely 2-3%. So you have 44 to 47% of Filipinos saying either wala na silang pake sa politika or wala na silang belief sa opposition or a combination of two. Eh, itong mga tipo na mag-migrate na lang tayo, wala na tayong pake sa mundo. Alright? Wala na pag-asa ang Pilipinas. Alright? So, when you have a situation like this, in my opinion, you needed two things. First of all, a proper post-mortem kung saan pag-aralan mo where on earth did the opposition go wrong in not one, not two, but three different elections. From 2016 all the way to 2022. Alright? Again, in spite of, Leni Robredo managing to eke it out by a small margin in 2016 against BBM, and also Riza making it at least to top 12 in the 2022 senatorial elections. But across the board, it has been an electoral disaster for the opposition. So you have to wonder what on earth is going on. And yun ang parati kong frustration na there was never a proper post-mortem. Now, I see movies being made about the pink movement. I see documentaries being made. I see, books being written. That's great. That's fantastic. I'm all for celebration of what the pink movement represented, at least the aspirations of the pink movement. Nevertheless, for me, that is not political analysis. In fact, I have not seen a single creative production on the pink movement consulting a single real political scientist or legit political analyst. None. Zero. Zilch. Right? So I see a bunch of creative people who know how to make a nice documentary, nice tarpaulin, nice emotional thing, coming up with their own version of political reality. Again, the intention is great. I welcome that because I think we have to constantly be reminded of what is achievable in the context of the Philippines, meaning millions of middle-class Filipinos coming out and out of their own pocket contributing to a movement for change, aspiring for a better Philippines. Okay yan, maganda yan. Pero ang kulang parati sa akin, guys, is wala talagang legit na political analysis. And please, no offense to some of my colleagues in media, but this whole, disinformation lang yan, disinformation lang yan, disinformation lang yan, or denial lang yan, I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it for me. All right? Because if you want to talk about disinformation, things are as bad in Brazil. Things are as bad in South Africa. Things are as bad in India. Things are as bad in Indonesia. Even worse, in Latin American countries sa mga oras, kung saan nananalo pa rin yung opposition. In fact, hindi lang nananalo yung center-left opposition, liberal-left, nananalo pa yung far-left opposition in many cases. So if you want to just use the disinformation as a basis to explain everything, immediately, you run into two problems. One is, there are other examples whereby same level of problems or similar problems and yet the opposition does better. But the second, and even more nefarious concern I have is, if you say it's all disinformation or it's 70% disinformation, you're essentially blaming the voters. You're blaming the voters. And let's be honest, the implication is extremely elitist. In effect, you're gaslighting the voters. Again, I didn't vote for BBM, I didn't vote for Digong. Absolutely not. But, you have to also understand bakit nawala ng pag-asa ang mga tao or nawala ng belief ang tao dun sa liberal left opposition. Actually, liberal opposition lang really. And, look at it. All those years ng liberal opposition were in power, was there a genuine transformation of Philippine political system? What percentage of Congress was dominated by political dynasty during time ni Pinoy or Corazon Aquino or Ramos, sige pilitin pa natin, or earlier years of Arroyo. Right? 70-80% pa rin. Ano yung poverty rate? Gaano ka significant reduction in poverty rate throughout those years? Yes, things did better during Pinoy. But, nevertheless, if you look at Gini coefficient, if you look at, for instance, distribution of wealth, in 2011, according to World Bank, 40 richest families in the country took home 76% of newly created growth. 40 pamilya lang, nakuha nila more than lampas sa kalahatan ng lahat ng mga new economic value na pinoproduce ng bansa natin noong 2011. And you think that became better over the next few years? No. There was no significant change because the structure of Philippine economy remained the same. Service-oriented, real estate-oriented, BPO-oriented, speculative-oriented, not much of manufacturing, unemployment among the highest in ASEAN region, and poverty and hunger rates also among the worst in the region. Right? And then in terms of realities on the ground, yung mga informal sectors, yung mga walang, matinong, kabuhayan or matinong housing, was there a significant improvement? So, you cannot blame voters kung nawala na sila ng belief dun sa traditional liberal sloganeering and all of that. Now, that doesn't mean that, okay, si Duterte. Absolutely not. I think Duterte exploited that grievance. Alright? And yes, Marcos has also exploited that grievance to come back. Essentially, sabi ng Marcos is, ang dami nilang pangako sa inyo, umalis kami, nasaan na kayo ngayon? Diba? And then, of course, there was disinformation, whether it's Digong or BBM and all, marami silang disinformation, given na yan. But what you have to ask is this, at yun, dito ako inis na inis, dun sa mga nag-feeling expert, to say that ang tao, ganito, sisisihin mo lang tao dahil naniwala sila sa disinformation, and then, hindi mo i-analyze bakit nga sila naniniwala sa disinformation, that means hindi mo alam pinagsasabi mo. Because again, there are two levels to that. First of all, there was a survey done, and Vox, for instance, published that 2 years ago, which showed that actually karamihan sa mga tao na pro-BBM noong 2022, aminado naman sila na hindi naman sila naniniwala talaga dun sa mga Taliano gold, yung mga ganyan-ganyan. Alam din nila fake news yan eh. Pero sa sobrang inis nila sa kabila at yung elitism ng kabila, dito pa rin sila. So there was an element of almost just grievance and puerile backlash. Alright? To be honest about it. And also, let's just try something new. We're sick and tired of going back to the old thing. Right? So, there's that element of that. But yung pangalawa, another reason why nagtathrive ang disinformation is because of education system. Ang hina nung pundasyon ng ating education system. Critical thinking, critical understanding of history, sobrang missing. That's a fact. That has been a fact for a long time. Pero ano yung ginawa ng opposition, anong ginawa ng mga reformists and liberals to fix this problem all those years? What? So, yun ang point ko eh. Yes, disinformation is an issue. Yes, may dayaan sa elections. In fact, ang mas malaking concern sa akin sa dayaan ay vote buying. Pero vote buying works because walang poverty alleviation. Because ang dami sa ating mga probinsya, right, ay hawak pa rin ng mga warlords and dynasties. So, if our people are cynical, if our people are attracted to shortcuts, quote-unquote, shortcuts after 30 years of waiting is understandable, right? Kasi sa sobrang desperate mo, kasi walang significant change. Bawat araw, libo-libong Pilipino ay umalis ng bansa, pumupunta kung saan-saan para lang makahanap ng matinong kabuhayan. Right? Or at least some sort of a wage that enables them to sustain their people. Right? So you have to ask yourself the question, bakit maniwala pang tao sa mga paulit-ulit na pangako ng EDSA this, EDSA that, and then wala namang ginawa sa oligarchs, wala namang ginawa sa corruption, wala nothing significant. Wala namang ginawang significantly about industrial policy, about creating inclusive development. In fact, even if you bring corruption down, if you don't create an economy that is dynamic, that creates job, wala pa rin eh. You still cannot catch up with the realities on the ground. Alright? So, that's just the first level. Alright, that's just the first level, which is walang postmortem kung saan talagang magkakaroon ng solid, robust, realistic analysis na bakit nawalan ng pag-asa ng taong bayan. Bakit the same voters, the same Filipinos who voted Pinoy into power, the same Filipinos that voted Vico Soto into power, that voted Leni Robredo into power, they lost in general faith in traditional liberal politics. Dapat itanong natin sa sarili natin yan. And yan ang wala. And then that brings us to the second question. Andito na nga tayo, hindi na mobilize yung pink movement after 2022. Lahat na lang nag-retire or nag-travel vlogger or yung iba, yung gumawa ng good initiatives like Angat Buhay. Okay, that's great. But what happened to the pink movement? Was it mobilized? Was there logistics behind it? Were there attempts to make sure it's consolidated into something robust? Now, as I said, the irony is that dahil sa sobrang hina ng opposition, ang nangyari na lang is nag-away na lang yung dalawa, BBM versus Duterte. Because, wala pala tayong kalaban. So, the glue that was holding the unit team together was no longer existent. So, that's why they went at each other. But having said that, that doesn't excuse what many see as a lack of mobilization and sustenance of the momentum of the pink movement. So, going back to this, ang tanong is, what on earth is going to be done sa 2025 elections? Because if you look at every single pre-election survey, usual suspects ang mukhang may laban dyan. In fact, if anything, ba't yung mga Amy Marcos nahihirapan? Ba't sila Pacquiao hindi sigurado sa Senate? Si Isko nga parang nag-give up na lang, mag-mayor na lang siya sa Manila, although sariling gulo na naman yan, at pag-usapan natin yan. So, it's looking like a very, very, it's uphill battle for the genuine opposition. And then yung left naman makabayan, nagsariling sikap, gagawa daw sila ng sariling slate. So wala man lang unity between left and liberals. So ang gulo na ito. So dito pumapasok si Trillanes. So sinasabi niya, maging realistic tayo, the least we want is at least 1 or 2 seat in the Senate, in the next Senate, para naman may say. Para naman you have a seat at the table. Para naman hindi lang kayo nasa labas at nag-ekbang lang, dapat may say din kayo. Alright, so he's saying na baka pwede mag-guest candidate. Alright, that's where Trillanes is coming in. At ang point ni Trillanes is, hindi pwede yung pa-cute lang, hindi pwede yung pa-purity test, mga ganun-ganon. Now, saan papasok yung sarili kong analysis on this? So, first part for me, walang matinong postmortem, denialism, lahat na lang disinformation. So essentially, sinisisi mo yung mga voters, ginagaslight mo sila, hindi mo inintindi bakit sila nawalan ng pag-asa sa'yo. Baka naman, wala rin kayong ginawang sapat, diba? All those years that you were in power. Or baka hindi maganda yung campaign strategy nyo, baka medyo late kayo, baka hindi maayos yung slates nyo. Ang dami pwedeng pag-usapan na hindi na pag-usapan hanggang ngayon. Hanggang ngayon, nakikita ko yung mga movies, documentaries, whatever, glorifying what happened in 2022, but nothing about what happened before or after. Anyway, and no legitimate analysis, no real political scientists or experts really interviewed. Wala. It's all usual, a bunch of same people, same stuff. So walang growth. Walang intellectual growth, walang political growth. If anything, self-defeating. So what's the way forward? Dito, para sa akin, ang argument ko dito is this. You have to distinguish between strategy and tactics. So, what is the strategy? Anong end goal mo? Kung ikaw ay gustong tumakbo bilang isang opisyales at gusto mo tumulong sa bansa, ano yung strategy mo? Strategy is the end goal. Tactics is how you get there. Strategy is the what. Tactics is the how. Okay? This is Clausewitz. This is 101 military. Okay? Military science. Okay? Clausewitz, pakita ko yung libro. So, yung strategy here is, kung gusto mo tumulong sa bansa, tumakbo ka, manalo ka, tapos pag nanalo ka, ayusin mo yan. Huwag kang maging corrupt, huwag kang kumuha ng pera sa drug lords, narco-politicians, huwag kang mag-sugal, huwag kang mag-kalokohan, and then huwag kang mamatay tao, mga ganon. Given na yan. And then, tumulong ka sa bayan. Gawin mo yung tama. Dapat may prinsipyo ka. Dapat meron kang mga sapat na mga policy packages. Dapat matino yung team mo para magawa mo yung kailangan mo. Dapat magaling ka rin makihalo-bilo at to build coalitions, to work with different senators, to work with different officials, to work with different branches of the state so that you can push things in the right direction. That's the strategy. Right? At dun sa strategy mo, dapat klaro ka sa core principles mo. Dun sa core principles mo, bawal ang corruption, bawal ang kalokohan, bawal ang mamatay tao, bawal ang kumukuha ng pera sa oligarchs or ganyan. Bawal ang bayaran, bawal ang lahat yan. Okay? So yun, core principles mo yan. Alright? And bawal ang i-enable mo yung historical revisionism, distortionism, etc. Pero when it comes to tactics, tactics is about how do you get there. Alright? How do you get there? And I think this is where we can have a healthy debate. Ang contention nila Trillanes is, kung mag-guest candidate ka lang naman sa administration, di mo naman susuportahan yung Maharlika Fund, yung mga bagong lipunan kaekbangan, hindi mo naman susuportahan yung mga kapalpakan o kakulangan ng gobyerno. You just, you guest candidate, you have some presence, you have some logistical support, you can cover up for some of your past defeats and setbacks, and also make sure andun yung basic finances kasi kulang talaga resources, kulang talaga momentum, kulang talaga yung favorability ng genuine opposition. So, this is your best way to have some sort of interface with the administration but with the red lines very clear. So, kung nag-guest candidate ka, hindi sabihin ko na si Bam Aquino pupunta dyan or si Kiko at sabihin, ay, napakagaling na bagong lipunan, walang ginawa si Marcos na mali. Hindi pwedeng ganyan. Alright? Assuming okay ang admin doon. I think, yung administration naman, ang gusto lang nila ipakita is, i-project nila na broad coalition na sila kung saan minority na talaga mga Duterte. Mga Duterte ang minority, lahat kalaban nyo ngayon. Siguro, papayag na siguro ang administration sa ganun lang. But then again, I don't know the exact facts. What are gonna be the exact terms of reference if ever mag-guest candidate sila? For me, if the guest candidate means that didepensahan mo yung historical crimes ng Marcoses, didepensahan mo yung mga kaekbangan ng Maharlika Fund, mga ganyan, tapos ka. Not only is it morally wrong, I think it's also gonna undercut you and essentially end yung career ng mga ibang supposed genuine opposition leaders. Because that will make it very difficult for them to make a comeback in 2028. Alright? So for me, the devil is in the details. And then there's another way of also approaching this. Maybe not a guest candidate, but maybe some sort of modus vivendi. Kung saan, ang understanding here is, we'll criticize each other, kikriticize namin ng Marcos administration, whatever, pero mas focus tayo sa mga Dutertes kasi sila naman talagang tunay na kalaban ng bayan. Kalaban ng constitutional order sa bayan. Alright? Silang talagang pinaka-Karen at pinaka-pampagulo sa bayan. Pwede rin na ganitong approach. But, as I said, it's not free of risks. And it's a very, very difficult decision to make. Alright? Very, very difficult decision to make. Because much will depend about what... Mahirap talaga yun, guys. Do you see what I'm saying here? And this is why hindi pwede pumasok ka lang sa politika kung hindi ka klaro talaga dun sa vision mo at hindi ka klaro talaga dun sa mga first principles mo and second principles mo. Ang first principles can never be compromised. The moment you compromise your first principles, tapos ka na. You're just meat. You're just another kadiring trapo. Alright? But, if you're clear about your first principles, but you can a little bit work around tactics, secondary principles, you may pull it off. But that will also come with some costs and huge risk. Because yung sinasabi ni Trillanes na guest candidate, imagine if Bam Aquino is a guest candidate, sumali siya sa isang event, nagsayaw siya, and then sa event na yan, meron mga chance ng bagong lipunan or bagong bayan, bagong Pilipinas na, o bagong Pilipinas pala, hindi na bagong lipunan, which harkens back to Marcos dictatorship, which is the very thing that is an antithesis of what the Aquino stood for. Baka lagot ka dyan, di ba? So, ang hirap nito, guys. Ang ihirap talaga ito, guys. Kaya, for me, instead of jumping to judgment, instead of jumping to cancel culture, instead of canceling Trillanes, or immediately rejecting and sabihin, masyadong purist yung kabila, I hope we have enough critical thinking to understand gaano kahirap yung situation ng opposition. And as I said, it all goes back to a fundamental problem. The lack of proper postmortem, the lack of proper analysis of what really went wrong in these last 3 elections. How did they lose their grip on the imagination of the Filipino people? Right? Having said that, let me end on a slightly more optimistic note. And that optimistic note for me is this. As we saw in India and other countries, sometimes yung sobrang discredited na opposition will have a chance to come back. Usually after a kind of a decade in wilderness. And I think papunta na tayo dun sa end ng decade of wilderness na yan. Because by that time, nakikita rin ng limitation ng ino-offer ng kabila. So 6 years of Duterte, kamustang drug problem? Yung sinabi niya 6 months crime and drugs. Okay. So medyo na-expose na yung mga budulking ni Digong. At the same time, Dito kay BBM, kamusta naman? Kamusta yung pangako niya na bigas ng 20 pesos? Kamusta naman yung pangako na this and that? So it's very possible by 2028, mas bukas ang mga taong bayan dun sa mga ibang alternatives, including a refurbished and repurposed and upgraded, hopefully, genuine opposition. Right? And I think if there's one person who shows the way forward more than anyone else, that's Riza Ontiveros. That's why I'm watching very carefully how Riza Ontiveros is positioning on things, how is she navigating politics, and how is she still sticking to her core principles. Because I think Riza Ontiveros is still the gold standard for progressive and genuine opposition in the Philippines. More than anyone else, no offense to anyone else. But I think she's the one person there we have to watch carefully and learn lessons from. And I hope she continues on the same path and does the right thing. On that note, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. Thank you so much for listening to this early morning discussion. Sabi ko, bawi ako dun sa discussion na hindi ko nahabol kagabi. And then tonight, balik tayo sa RRM with Ronald, with Mark, Attorney Mark, and si DILG Senator, ex-Senator, Fisher, ex-Senator, si Ronald Diamos. Pag-usapan natin yan. Maraming nangyari sa ating bansa. But I just felt I have to give my own 2 cents on this issue. And you can see, pinag-isipan ko na mabuti itong mga to. This is a product of contest writings, academic writings, non-academic writings, popular writings, conversations, talking to people here and there, people in the opposition, people in the center, people in the other side, not DDS so much anymore, and never really. And so this is the big picture we're looking at. Not to mention more than 600 episodes on Spotify, so please feel free to mag-episode 600 na yata tayo. Please continue to support us on our different platforms, on Spotify, Deep Dive with Richard Hidarian, and also on Apple Podcast. And please continue to also support us here para makamit din natin mga basic thresholds natin. Of course, on Facebook, tuloy-tuloy yung momentum natin. We hope to meet the 1 million target at some point in the elections, and then hopefully dito sa YouTube at least makuha natin yung 100,000 subscribers. 90 na tayo ngayon. Hopefully we can push it to 100K within the month or so para legit na tayong YouTubers and ma-confirm na natin yung account natin. Alright? So thank you so much for your support. Continue to support us. Salamat dun sa mga nakikinig at na sa atin. I really appreciate it. Again, yung mga nagmamagaling dyan, low rating lang si Risa. She got almost 16 million votes for the Senate. Alright? You never know. She could also run for Vice President. Who knows? She could team up with Rafi Tulfo. There's so many possibilities here, guys. You have to be open to possibilities. But before possibilities open up, you have to understand what went wrong, what went right in the past, so that you can strategize and adjust accordingly. In the meantime, I'm not giving you immediate answers, but I'm giving you means to think about proper political analysis para hindi tayo mapapadala sa mga kaikbangan, sa pakyutan, sa kayabangan, kaek-ekan. Alright? Thank you very much, guys. God bless. And talk to you soon. Also, dito sa TikTok, please continue to support us. May na-post na tayo ng highlights natin, interviews natin with Justice Carpio, especially yung kanyang banat sa PhilHealth fund transfer. Also with Trillanes, yung banat naman niya sa mga Dutertes at yung mga sinampan niyang kaso laban sa mga Dutertes kahapon. Lahat yan nandyan, in-upload natin. We're doing more in live and all of this. Alright? Thank you very much. God bless and talk to you soon. Salamat also sa lahat ng bigyan ng support, stickers and stars and support.